Hello and welcome to All for United. It's another episode of the United Daily Podcast. Thank you for joining me. Hope you're having a good Tuesday so far. It's about to get so much better because we've got a real insight from fans that watch the team that they love week in, week out ahead of this Thursday's Europa League tie against AC Milan. Yes, we're joined by two AC Milan fans. I've got Matt with me, who is one of the co-founders of AC Milan Bros, also does a lot of podcasting and writing as well when it comes to Serie A. And we've also got Frank as well. Frank does the Serie A Sitdown. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Frank, I see you've got the Ibrahimovic shirt in the background as well. Let me come to you first. Right. Before we jump in and chat about your form at the moment, looking ahead to Thursday's game, you got drawn to Manchester United. What was your reaction?
These are when you get into competitions like this. I mean, even in the Europa League, these are the draws you, as a fan, you look forward to. I mean, in all reality, when you get into these group stages and you see some of these teams that you never heard of, it's all right. So we're going to get 6 points out of these guys, over 2 games and that sort of thing. But then when you start getting deeper into the tournament, it becomes more and more likely the better teams are going to surface. So when it was Milan and Manchester United, I'm excited for these 2 games. And I'm hoping that both of these teams, live up to it and play accordingly. I think that obviously there's incredible pedigree between both clubs. So it will bring some attention to the Europa League that you probably would not have otherwise gotten.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And Matt, would you go along with that? It's a bit of a romantic European tie between 2 big giants of Europe, isn't it?
It is, and it's funny too, because only now it feels like that Milan are getting some of those like Champions League, type quality players maybe in their side. I know it's been a long time since we've seen them in the Champions League and have the sort of caliber players to sort of meet that standard. But now what you're seeing this year with Milan is that they have the success on the field. They finished the first half of the season as winter champions. And obviously they're still in a pretty good position in the league. So for these 2 sides to come up and meet at this time, it's a very important part of the season for both. Obviously United are just coming off a victory over City, a massive one. And I know the title's a little bit of a ways out for them, but that's a very strong statement for Manchester United to make ahead of a match of this sort of magnitude against Milan. So like Frank said, I'm very excited. I know Ibrahimovic is not going to be available for the first leg, but I think generally speaking, you're going to get a match in the Europa League around a 16 that feels more of like a Champions League night for both. So I think if you're a neutral in this, I know you would. Everyone here is probably going to have very different emotions throughout these 2 matches. But if you're a neutral in this, you're going to turn it on. And aside from the different anthem for the Europa League, which is different for the Champions League, of course, it's going to feel like those sort of Champions League matches we've come to know over the years.
Yeah, I am completely with you on that. And I think I was looking back, I tagged you guys in a picture of an old photo of Ronaldo running past Gattuso. Like, so many different icons of the club, so many different legends, so much history between the 2 of us. It's good that we're coming full circle. And as both clubs, fingers crossed, are back on the rise.
You mean you didn't want to put up Kaká running past Heinze and all the defenders running into each other?
I've ignored that ever happened. That night at Old Trafford didn't happen. It was at Old Trafford, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, that night never happened. What are you on about? What night? But yeah, I think it's. But again, like you say, it's a graceful moment. That moment, I think we all sat there and watched Kaká and that Milan team in absolute awe. And I think at times you guys have done the same to us as well. And I think there's great respect there between the fans. I mean, we'd love a night out in Italy. It's a shame that it's not happened tonight. Thursday night. But I think it's a glamorous tie, and I think, for just looking from the outside, and you guys can give us some more on this, from a United fan's point of view, we've got a point to prove. We should never have exited the Champions League like we did. That shouldn't have happened. Now we're in the Europa League. We got knocked out of the semi-final last year after we were convinced we were going to go on and win it, especially when you looked at the latter stage of the competition and the teams left in there. I think this year, the Europa League would be a fantastic trophy for Ollie to win and kickstart that hall of the fact of being a manager that can win trophies and take United potentially to that next level. So I want to see us go for it this year. And I think we proved against Sociedad that we can take teams apart when they come to play against us. And that's the beauty of cup football. You've got 2 teams going against each other for, what is it now, 180 minutes, looking to win the game. Then you need to get away goals. You need to win each individual leg. And And I don't see AC Milan sitting back against us and going, come and break us down. Don't worry, we'll do the job in a second leg, because that's really, really dodgy. And I don't think any team in European football rests on their laurels like that. So I suppose, Frank, the question that I want to come over and ask, I've mentioned there how important this trophy could be to United. How important is this trophy potentially to AC Milan?
I'm wrestling with this. Interestingly enough, even if you go back to the UEFA Cup, this is the one trophy that's not in AC Milan's collection throughout their incredible history, and that's incredible to say. They, the Champions League, the old Cup, Winners' Cup, obviously Serie A, World Club Cups, all that other, you just to name a few, but the old UEFA Cup, Europa League trophy is not in Milan's collection. So as fans, it would be nice to have that addition. I've been struggling with this as to whether or not this is really important to Milan. I mean, if you talk to a certain fan base of Milan, and what Matt and I refer to as Milan Twitter, they would tell you, let's get out of this. Well, let's just be all in on making sure that Milan are top four and they're back in the Champions League next season. And I guess the round of 16, when you're the round of 16, it's really, I think do we go for it, or do we punt this, or, do we put out a lineup and, hey, if we win, it's a bonus. That's kind of where I'm at with it as a Milan supporter. Top four has been the objective for me, but if you ask Stefano Pioli, he'll tell you if we're in a competition, we're in it to try to win we're trying to win the whole thing. So I think it would be great if Milan could win the Europa League. Is it the priority for them this season? My own perspective, no. But I'm never going to complain about Milan winning a trophy, though.
Yeah, of course. And we're in that same situation now where we know potentially, and we'll hear this from you guys in a minute, the league's completely out of touch. We've got one other domestic competition. We're now in the semi-finals again in the Carabao Cup. I want to see United win a trophy. And this is a competition where we can potentially win a trophy. And Matt, what about you? Would you like to see Milan lift that Europa League? And where is it in terms of priorities for you this season?
I agree with everything Frank has said. I know the feelings about the tournament right now at this stage are very mixed. As we get deeper, there's always just that little bit of a desire. Well, hey, if something gets lucky, we get a lucky draw. Obviously, Milan didn't get that lucky draw here because they obviously would probably have preferred someone a little bit, a little bit softer, a little bit lighter, and not a club that's coming off a big victory over City. So from that perspective, I think, like I'm telling you off air, I think a lot of Milan fans, while they do want it, they have that same sort of mindset that you're in the competition. It's a trophy you don't have in your trophy cabinet back at Casa Milan. Why not go for it? But given the nature of this season, and I would probably say if this wasn't a pandemic type season, and there wasn't a lot of injuries that Milan have suffered, and Milan weren't a team that's been 7-8 years out of the Champions League, then I would probably say, yeah, go for it. Mm-hmm. By all means. Like this is a team that has historically won trophies, and you should have that same sort of ambition always. You should always want to be chasing after silverware. With that being said, we all know that Milan have a ton of injuries heading into this match and really in the build-up to it. I mean, on the weekend, they had a victory over Verona with probably 6 to 7 starters out. I mean, no Ibrahimovic, no Tonali, Benacer, Teo Hernandez. I mean, so many guys out, Hakan Çalhanoğlu. So, when you look at that and you think, do we really want to risk certain players in this match for a tie that, let's face it, it's going to be very difficult to get through over 2 legs anyway? Or do we put the priorities in getting top 4, which I, for one, have always been a firm believer in that. I just think there's so much riding on the season for Milan to get top 4 from a financial standpoint, from a renewal standpoint with Gigio Donnarumma looking to get a new contract, and Milan fans begging ownership to get it done. So I'm, for one, I obviously want Milan to win. I want them to progress. I want them to be chasing the biggest and brightest trophies they can possibly attain. But at the same time, I kind of just want a competitive match. I want to see if Milan can compete against a team like United and be competing on that level, right? Because it's difficult to sometimes gauge domestically, and you guys will probably agree with me on this, of where you stack up as far as being back and amongst some of the best in your league and amongst the best in Europe. If you can compete with Manchester United over 2 legs and really give it to them and really make them work for this, I think it would send a big message to many outside of Milan and many outside of Italy that saying, hey, wow, Milan are really doing something this year. I mean, look at the squad they put out there. It's not exactly healthy, but Pioli's playing a pretty good style of football. They have a lot of young talent coming up, and there's a lot of potential on this side moving forward. And I think that's kind of the mindset that I have heading into these 2 legs.
Yeah, I mean, let's hit on that. You're saying obviously if you can compete and you can use this as, so to speak, a chart to see where Milan are currently at. Frank, it'd be interesting to hear from you. You know, how have Milan progressed over the past year or two? Where are you guys at now compared to the likes of Inter and Juventus?
I think as far as, to start with Milan's own personal trajectory, I think they're ahead of schedule, with what we probably expected of them. We're coming out of years of just mismanagement of the club. And I mean, that's really no fault of Berlusconi or Galliani's. It's just, they just financially could not compete with all of the money that was starting to get poured into clubs. So they ended up resorting to, trying to get free transfers, trying to get players on loan. And it was mainly players who were on the downswing of their careers that they were signing to try to inject something. I mean, we're reminded of, Matt, cover your ears, Michael Essien, Fernando Torres, guys like this that were just brutal at their, at the stage of their careers by the time Milan signed them. And then we had the Chinese ownership that came in and bought everything in sight and then just couldn't financially sustain it. And then Elliott, it all defaulted to Elliott. I think defaulted is the right way to put it. And they've been a lot more responsible. They've put in some good people that know how to manage a club. Paolo Maldini, originally it was an on-the-job training thing, but when you look at the job that he's done and what he's attracted to this roster has been actually very impressive. For somebody who, doesn't have a lot of experience in his position. You're talking about, a player like Ismail Benacer who could have gone anywhere, at the time when he was with Empoli and, he chose Milan. He got Rafael Leao, who, Milan fans have mixed feelings about at this point, depending on it. When Leao shows up, he's excellent, but there are games where he doesn't show up. And then he's pretty much cleaned Milan of all of the signings that the Chinese group came in and did it, with the exception of Frank Kessie, and I think in Hakan Çalhanoğlu, and he's done it in short order. He brings in a manager like Stefano Pioli, who his arrival came with a lot of criticism, not from me, but he's put them ahead. He's put them ahead of schedule. They bring in Ibrahimovic, they bring in veteran players to work with all of the young players that they signed, and they have a very good dressing room by comparison to what they had a few years ago. So all of that is blended to them being ahead of schedule. They were top of Serie A for a lot of this season. Now they sit second. They're ahead of schedule. We thought top 4. I thought they could finish 4th this season. I had not given any expectation to them being top of the table at any time. So with the job, you have to give a lot of credit to Stefano Pioli and the job that he's done. You've got to give credit to Maldini and Gazidis and the guys in the back room who have done a great job in helping to assemble this team and make it more competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting the points there Frank's made us from an outside perspective, Matt. In terms of the journey you've been on, it's good to see you guys in a better position now and more stable. And as fans, we've been through it. The last 6-7 years, has just been horrendous from that board level. And what is Maldini's official role? Is he the sporting director for you guys? Is that his role? Everyone talks about sporting directors and having former players on the board. I really think Maldini's shown how much difference it can make having someone who understands the club, its philosophy, and Nicky Butt's sort of doing it now from the academy side of things with us, and we're starting to prosper from that side too. But when it comes to the first team, it's still work in progress. And Matt, I think you'd agree you are still a work in progress. You've made great progress this year, but how have you been playing under Pioli? How has this year gone for you? How would you sort of, so to speak, describe Milan when it comes to the style of play?
It's really tough to say. I mean, I know there's people going to probably have a different opinion on their play style, whether it's something that's sustainable. Is it something that's going to be easily figured out by the opposition? which I think is kind of what Milan have been in recent weeks, right? I think they had a really strong start to the season, as Frank alluded to, and then they had a really rough start to 2021, and you question and wonder, is that down to injuries? Is it down to COVID tests? Is it down to the opposition on the second leg of the season, just simply figuring out what Milan does and likes to do and how they like to play? I think they're a team that, unlike we've seen in previous years, that they have an identity under Pioli, which I think is very important. And they're a team that can attack. But most importantly, I think, when you add a guy like Ibrahimovic into the equation a little over a year ago, I think everything started to change. They had finally a reliable striker, and that's something that's been very evasive from them and their squad over the past handful of years. I mean, Andre Silva, Fernando Torres, as Frank mentioned, Krzysztof Piątek, who had a really good start to the season, a really good start to his career at Milan, and then they moved him on really quickly. So it's important to have that number 9, especially one with Ibrahimovic's ability and caliber and success, to sort of take the burden off a lot of these younger players. And I think that's what allowed guys like Leao, guys like Hakan, even Salamakers, who arrived at this team as a largely unknown player from Belgium. And then he comes in and he's a starter and he's doing pretty well. So I think they're a team that does like to attack. I think they can defend in moments when they need to, specifically like we saw on the weekend against Verona, where they had a lot of guys out, but they had Tomori and Romagnoli in there, and they pretty much held Verona in check the entire match. And there was maybe one shot on target. So they have their moments where they can be very balanced. They also have their moments where they would like to take risks going forward if they see the moment in the match to take those risks. So the way I see Milan heading to this Manchester United match, and I think you kind of touched on it at the very beginning of this, that I think they're going to try to be aggressive here, especially with the first leg being away. You want to be able to, at the very least, go for a goal, leave nothing to chance, because if you can get it 1-1, if you can get it 2-1 even United, and you have that away goal going back to San Siro, you feel awfully good about yourself. So I anticipate that. Again, we'll have to see what the lineup looks like, of course, right? If there's no Hakan, there's no Benacer, some of these guys are out, which I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of players out for this match ahead of the Napoli match, which is very important for them on the weekend. Then it's going to be, you may see a little bit of a different sort of Milan and approach from Pioli. He may be, yes, willing to take risks at certain moments, maybe sit back, defend, look to counter. But I think it's going to be really difficult to see what Milan has been about this year in this match for the reasons I just mentioned, with the squad being a little bit on the thinner side.
Just to follow up on what Matt was saying, Milan are definitely a team that when you look at Serie A, there are teams that are happy to have the ball, and there are teams that are far better off without it. And Milan would probably prefer to have the ball. Yeah. And when they do, you get, Teo Hernandez making a lot of hard runs forward down the left-hand side. He loves to get forward. He loves to get in the penalty area. Calabria on the right tends to probably pick his spots a little bit more and is a little bit better defender as far as fullbacks go. They play, and the reason why they do that is because they play with a double pivot that protects the back four. Now, at its best, it's the combination of Benacer and Frank Kessie. Kessie is just the guy that distance covered probably 12, 13 miles in a game, and it wouldn't shock me. Benacer is more of the passer, but in defense, he's more of the man marker. He's the guy that probably picks up the most dangerous midfielder. Saw it in the derby, in the first derby against Inter, when he did it against Barella. And if he was fit and available on Thursday, you would be seeing him following Bruno Fernandes around quite a bit in Milan's third of the pitch. So that element is out. So that's a little bit of a concern. And I think that's going to definitely change the way Pioli approaches these games. You don't have the target presence of Ibrahimovic for the first game. And where that really hurts Milan is that we have a lack of players that can individually stretch you and take you apart. We don't have dribblers. We don't have guys that 1v1 are anybody that are going to scare you. We've got potential with some guys, a guy like Jens Petter Hauge, but he's the classic example of a guy that's coming over from a smaller league and really still going through an adaptation period. A guy like Rafael Leao is capable of that, but he may end up being the striker in this setup on Thursday, which by and large takes that away. So Milan's comfortable with the ball. There's some individual characteristics that could be put to use on Thursday, but through the injuries there are some that are going to be missed.
I think it's interesting, Frank and Matt, to be honest, because I was also looking at the form table and recent results. I think a bit like us, slightly sketchy in terms of performances when the team turns up and doesn't turn up. Slightly different approaches for games as well. That sometimes you're wondering what's sort of going on. But also, both teams better away from home, it seems, than actually at home too. I think it's going to be an interesting one. Matt, you hit on there. You expect AC to so to speak maybe come out the traps and attack United. I would say that makes me happy. Very, very happy, because United are by far a better team when the opposition comes out and tries to take us on. I mean, Frank, you sort of said there, but also Milan are happy to have the ball. United struggle when we're up against low blocks and teams that know how to defend and are really compact. I think the one thing that Milan do have that is slightly similar to United is formations are mirrored by the looks of it. I looked at the last few games, you play with that double pivot and the number 10. I just wonder if the big telling factor in this tie is actually just going to come down to, as you mentioned there, Frank, quality in positions and having those moments within the game that can change the tie. I wonder if that will make a big factor. For instance, I would go out on a limb and say United probably have, if you have a look player by player, the better players on paper. It just depends what that system's going to look like, doesn't it? So, United this year have been a moments team. We thrived in moments, really. Apart from that first leg against Sociedad, maybe, Southampton and City, we rarely put in a 10 out of 10 performance and tear a team apart. We often go out there and moments help us get through games. Counter-attacks, just fast, fluid. We saw that attacking football against City, how we just completely made their defence chase bloody chickens, look like they're chasing chickens. It was insane how good we looked against City. So, but then I can't sit here hand on heart to either of you and go, that's United that are going to turn up against AC Milan. I can't tell you that because I'm not sure. Matt, looking in for you. Let's go. Matt, we'll do concerns with you. Frank, we do areas where you think AC can sort of thrive in. For you, Matt, looking at this United team, looking at the way AC have been this season, what concerns you the most going into the first leg? Are there any players on the United side in particular you want to point out? Any positions within the AC side where you think that actually, the injuries may cost you more than anywhere else on the pitch?
Yeah, I want to focus on United here for a little bit because I think obviously I have a buddy of mine who's a big United fan. He's been, ever since this got drawn, been chatting and chirping me the entire time. And I, for one, just wasn't too confident heading into this match, and I still kind of don't feel that strongly about Milan's chances, in my opinion. I know Frank probably would agree with me. We do agree quite a bit. But with the way that United can play, to your point, Frank, having the individuals that can, in certain moments, like do it on their own, that can pull something out of nowhere and have that solo moment of brilliance and really change the complexion of a match on its own. Milan really don't have those guys. I mean, I know Leao can do it in spurts, and sometimes if he's off and not into the game, he's pretty much a non-factor for United to have to worry about. Whereas with United, they have guys like Bruno who can obviously pick a pass, can obviously create and make things happen in the final third, can obviously score goals. So when you have a guy like that, where even if maybe United aren't clicking, aren't firing on all cylinders, all it takes is for him to just pull something a little special, because that's what special players can do, and get a goal in this one. It may not be the sexiest, flashiest performance from United, and you just mentioned it too. They get by on moments. That's sometimes what Milan lacks. I mean, a lot of the matches that Milan typically win and do well in are more of a collective performance. We for the most part, I mean, we can talk about Ibrahimovic in certain matches, really doing special things, but when he's not here, you really look to the collective effort to get Milan over the hump and to get results. So Bruno is one I'm definitely focusing on. I think he's going to be a huge threat. And to Frank's point, no Benacer, so the midfield will probably struggle quite a bit in containing him. And then you look at the attackers. I mean, you look at Rashford, you look at Greenwood, you look at some of these guys that they have going forward, and I just really sometimes get very concerned with Theo Hernandez when he does bomb forward. He does it often. He does it really well. He can carry the ball out the back, but a lot of times it's very risky. A lot of the great runs he goes on, they end typically in the final third, and then he does something really strong and encouraging. but it's really risky because sometimes he can get dispossessed, and he's having to track back. And I know a team like United will take advantage of that. They're the type of team, and they're the caliber of players to take advantage of that. So I'm speaking more on the fact that they defensively, I'm a little bit concerned in that sense. I know Calabria has been pretty good this year. I know Teo Hernandez offensively is very strong, one of the best in the world as far as going forward and making things happen on that front. But Romagnoli, Tomori, if that is the pairing, maybe it is Kjaer. We'll have to see what the projected lineups say. But defensively, you're going up against a team like Manchester United, who are a little bit different than what you're going to see on a given match day in Serie A. So the expectations on that side are a little bit difficult. I'd be stunned if Milan can keep Man United off the score sheet in this one. But if they could keep it close, like I said, 2-1, they get a away goal, or 1-1, they keep it tied. I think they have to really just take that and run and be very delighted in that.
Yeah, a bit like the Sociedad game. You get a feel that the first leg's going to shape the whole tie, don't you? Frank, let me come over to you. We've heard about some of the concerning areas there from Matt. What about areas that United need to be wary of? Of course, Matt there spoke glowingly of Teo Hernandez, but what about a few other players? I know you've got a bit of an injury crisis going on, but surely there's areas where you feel like Milan can get at United.
Well, Milan can get a penalty, first of all.
So could we at the start of the season. That's gone lopsided now.
Yeah, I think Milan in Serie A this season has gotten 16 penalties, and I think that's a product of how they play, where they take their chances with pressing, where they take their chances in coming forward with numbers. And when they do that, when you get more numbers in the boxes, as I alluded to, Teo and Calabria love getting into the opponent's penalty area. Midfielders make darting runs in there, and it's a lot to keep track of, and fouls happen. So, so that's one thing. If it's Tomori and Romagnoli, I give Milan a better chance at keeping United under control than it would be if it was Kjaer and Romagnoli, and a couple of reasons for that. I think, first of all, Tomori has proven that he has the pace, he has the recovery ability that I think is going to be required for some of the attackers that Man United are going to bring forward. Romagnoli, when paired with a guy like Tomori, when he's paired with anybody other than Gabbia, he seems to be a lot more focused. He seems to be a little bit stronger on the tackle, and he looks better for some reason. But when he's paired with Kjaer, he looks a lot more exposed. And I only wonder if it's because Romagnoli as a defender might take the extra risk that Kjaer at his advanced stage of his career just doesn't have the pace or the athleticism to be able to support and recover. So those are some of the things there. Now, Tomori makes up for that, and he's been a very impressive signing for Milan on loan from Chelsea. But we're all hoping they can make that permanent. But if that's the pairing, I give Milan a chance to keep United somewhat under control. So that's one thing there. Matt mentioned Teo's runs going forward, and I think that's Milan's best chance at creativity. The combination of that and the quick passing and the quick combination play, I think, can put United in position where they're going to have to do a lot of reacting. You could see some fouls. That double pivot of United is solid, but in the limited games that I've seen is not spectacular. I think you can get around it and get at the two center backs, and then it's a matter of, can you create off of that? So, so I think that's where United have to be wary. This is a Milan that's going to try to move the ball around them quickly. That's what they did against Hellas Verona without the likes of Çalhanoğlu, without Ibrahimovic, where if you had Ibrahimovic in there, the game is a lot more predictable because just about every attack is going to go through him. Whether he holds it up and plays other guys forward, or drops balls back, or things like that. So I think that those are the things that United are going to have to be wary of. They're going to have to mind their manners when Milan are in and around their penalty area, because they've been getting a lot of penalties this season. I agree with Matt from Milan's perspective. If they can somehow come away with an away goal, and keep this thing close and take it back to the San Siro, that I think that Milan fans will be more than happy with that.
Yeah, and as you said earlier on, that whole will to compete and to be in there competing, if you can get through the first leg and be in the second leg, I think that just goes to show it. So it ticks that box. Just a few more questions on players. Matt or Frank, I don't know who's better to potentially answer this. I'm not expecting you to have an injury list in front of you, but off the top of your head, you said there that was it 6 or 7 players were out for the game against for the game at the weekend.
Yep.
How's that looking? How's that injury crisis, so to speak, looking going into Thursday?
I got it here. Paulo's son Daniel Maldini has an unknown injury, and I don't expect him to play on Thursday anyway. Benacer is still going to be out with a muscle injury. Mario Mandzukic has muscular problems. Çalhanoğlu has an injury. The strange thing with Çalhanoğlu is that he did come back for a little bit, but he did not look right. So I don't know if the injury was still lingering and he still needs more time. Zlatan is got a tear in an adductor muscle he's not going to play Thursday.
Second leg he will probably.
What's that?
The second leg he probably will play.
Antonio Vitiello, who is on Twitter, reported that it's very possible he could be available for the weekend game, but Thursday is out. Teo Hernandez, it's a shin bone bruise, and it's one of those tricky things. It's kind of a day-to-day thing. I would think he plays Thursday. And then Rebic has a hip flexor issue, and I don't know whether or not he's going to be Matt, I don't know if you've seen anything since, but then that's another one of those tricky little nagging ones that, if he can go, he'll play, and if not, we're going to be looking for somebody else to step in.
I think one of the big focuses, a couple of the players I want to focus on in this case, or in that list of questionable or / players that are doubtful or maybe even out. One would be Teo Hernandez, as you mentioned, right? I think if he's able to go, I think he's obviously going to be very key for Milan going forward, and ultimately the defense being able to cover him on the back end. But if not, well, is it Diogo Dalot, right? And is it a match against Manchester United where he can prove a little something, right, to the Manchester United fans? Because I know there's a lot of mixed opinions on him from both fan bases, because I think he started pretty well at Milan, and then everyone was like, Maldini's got to find a way to bring this guy in permanently. He's playing really well. He's perfect. And then he had some matches at right back, which is not his primary position, where he struggled. And then on the weekend, he plays pretty well at left back, and he scores a really, really great goal. So
just quickly, Matt, on Dado, that's what's really weird. Dado's a right back, and he always has been at United. Yeah. We've never played him at left back really, apart from if we needed to make a substitution. For me with Dado, I don't know if you've seen it, Matt, and feel free to carry on. It's just hot and cold all the time. Sometimes you'll get Dado putting a ball in the box, and it's like the rebirth of Beckham. You'll get him flying down the wing, and it's like the rebirth of Ronaldo. And then the next time, it's like a mix between Bebe and Obertan. And these are just partial United players I'm referring to. It's the class doesn't seem to be permanent, if you know what I mean. It's
right. And I think if you look at the stat, the breakdown of the certain performances he has played in Europa League, Cup play, and the domestic competition, I think Frank would agree with me on this, and you could probably elaborate more than I can. But at left back, he's just looked more comfortable. I think when you have Calabria at right, and then you have him at left back, or even Kalulu at right back, which we haven't really discussed, but he's a nice player himself. I think that's where Dalot's looked a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable. But so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Maybe Teo plays a portion of the game, and then Dalot comes in the second half and it sort of does damage control or prevention of any sort of nagging injuries that may arise. But one player I think we haven't touched on that I think for both sides here, I'm really curious and excited to see more of, especially at this stage, is Sandro Tonali. In the midfield, if that's where Pioli likes to go. I think he should be back for this one. I think he was on the bench for the Verona game, but it was more of a precautionary thing just to keep him out and not risk anything. So if it's Kessie is a lock, he plays every game for Milan. He just doesn't get a rest. If it's going to be him next to Tonali, then I really do like Milan's chances in the midfield in that sense, because Tonali's come on very good of late.
Yeah.
But if it's Miete, which another player we haven't really touched on, who's once again has played better in recent weeks, but is very susceptible to being just completely outplayed, overrun, and just not quite effective enough. So
it's interesting you mentioned the midfield battle, actually, Matt, because United currently are going through an injury crisis when it comes to our midfield. We're definitely not going to have Pogba. I think Van der Beek's still suffering with a knock, so we haven't really seen much of him anyway. He tends to want to go with with McTominay and Fred over Matic. However, McTominay's been struggling recently. Fred's played a lot of games and hasn't looked great at all, hasn't looked sharp. I actually think it was interesting. The game against City, we more or less bypassed that midfield battle. We literally didn't play with the ball much at all, and we didn't give the ball much to our midfielders. And from when they did have the ball, the instruction was to just move it extremely quickly, just get on your opposite number and don't let them go anywhere. I think for that, I wasn't impressed at all. And I haven't been with McTominay and Fred the last couple of games. And I like them individually. I haven't been impressed that they're usually better than that when they're together. And I just feel like in the last few games, they haven't, so to speak, been there. It's going to be an interesting midfield battle. But from your guys' point of view, Pogba's going to be out. So just update you on that. Pogba's going to be out. I don't think Rashford is going to be fit enough to play. Yeah, which is going to be interesting to see what Ollie does, because Cavani might be back, which means that you just move Martial out to the left, Cavani down the middle, have James or Greenwood on the right. But part of me would love to see Ollie go, right, Martial, you played really well against City. Stay up top. James, you come in off the left. Amad Diallo, Serie A. You played for Atalanta, although you didn't play many games. Don't get me wrong, but you've been in and around a team and a squad that have done really well in recent times in Serie A. Here's your chance. AC Milan, go play against them. And I think that could be a really exciting prospect for United. And again, gives us an opportunity to see what the young lad's all about with a little bit more, where he's going to be slightly more confident and slightly more comfortable playing up against an Italian team potentially. So it'd be interesting to see where he goes with that front line. We've got a number of players there. Rashford being out. To be honest, he played well against City, but he hasn't been in great form recently. So I think he needs a rest, and I'd actually be advocating a rest for him. If Van der Beek's fit, I'd be advocating for Bruno to have a rest as well in the first leg. I would, because again, he's just played minute after minute after minute. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Again, like I said to you earlier on, I can't predict how United are going to play on Thursday, and I also can't predict what team's going to start, because it could. You don't know. It reassures me that you've got a few injury problems as well, and that you're sort of in a similar boat to us. And we've spoken about being a moments team and having those moments. Again, I go into this game believing that United can have a couple of moments. It's whether we can stop you guys from playing through us and from scoring that away goal. I'm confident enough that I could see this going, United getting a couple of goals. I'm not on about loads. I'm on about 2-0 would suit us to the ground, because there'd be less pressure on that second leg. But you do worry, having that first leg at home, conceding that away goal, you then have it all to do going away from home. And like you guys, I know you mentioned this earlier on, I'll come around to a final set of questions. We've got some really tough and important league games and cup games coming up. We've got Leicester in the cup. We've got a game against, I believe it's Leeds coming up. We've got West Ham coming up as well. Like games we have to win. We have to win if we want top four. So, Matt, final point coming over to you. Sort of when it comes to the league, I said we've got some important games around us. Is there any chance that you guys could look past it? Is there any chance that you guys could go, well, do you know what, with our injury concerns or injury crisis, let's just get a bit of stability from the weekend, play that team or similar, and sort of let's look ahead to Napoli more than Thursday? Or do you think that Milan are going to come and give it a real go?
I think Pioli will put out a lineup that's respectable, that takes some sort of risks. As I mentioned, Tonali, I could see him getting this moment to start if he is completely no concerns and he's ready to go. But I do think there's going to be, and you're going to see it in the 11 that they put out potentially, that he's going for it, but he's also being very precautionary with the match against Napoli, which is very important. So I think at the end of the day, you'll see some starters, you'll see some players in there that have been playing more in recent weeks because of injuries, but are really not like the guys that Milan tend to rely on, and that Frank probably likes that much, like Samus of the world, and some of these other guys. Maybe we see Brahim Diaz. I don't know. I think he's another fascinating player to potentially keep an eye on in a match like this, where I think he does have the capabilities to do some things individually in the final third, but we just haven't seen it consistent enough or recent enough like we saw in the beginning of the season. So with all this being said, I think that this is the match where Pioli will potentially like to go with a pretty balanced lineup, some guys out, some starters in. But as the game goes on, guys, we all know this. If it's one of those matches where it's very chippy, it's very back and forth, a lot of energy being exuded, or maybe even United's up a goal, then maybe it changes. Or maybe if Milan get ahead very early or in the first half, he's thinking, hey, I got my away goal, let's take some guys out here. So there's many different ways for Pioli to manage this, and I think it's going to be very, very closely looked at by Milan fans specifically, because the last thing that they want to do is, and they did this in many ways with Benacer. They played Benacer in a Europa League game, and he re-aggravated an injury, and then he's been out now. So I think Milan fans are very, very hesitant and very concerned with Pioli's 11. They're going to be keeping a close eye on that, and I think, obviously that's something for you to focus on too.
Just quickly, Matt, just on that, how close are you to securing top four? Is it because at a point you was lingering around the top three, and I think you're still there as well, aren't you? So sort of is the title race sort of over for you guys? Is it now all about top four? Where are the intentions in the league at the moment?
It depends on who you ask. I think in the table, 6 points isn't so severe and not something you can overcome.
6 points off top. At the moment.
Inter are in first place, and they've been just in really, really fine form. Whereas with Milan 2021, they've been struggling.
They're only famous because they've got a famous rival in AC Milan. No one knows who Inter Milan is.
I could always get on board with trolling Inter. I could always get on board with that.
I'd hope that you'd join me in trolling Liverpool if I was about to. So, there we go. I'll just throw that in there.
But I think right now, if you ask most Milan fans, especially after the defeat to Inter a couple weeks ago, and how heavy of a defeat it was, and how just Inter are able to pick out results like they did yesterday against Atalanta, which was very impressive. Holding a team off the score sheet like Atalanta, who love to score for fun, is very impressive. And it shows the fact that Inter, when they're on one competition under Conte, they're very difficult to overcome. I know Juve are lurking. I know they're always going to be there. There's always going to be that sort of hesitancy to rule them out. But I think right now, Frank would probably agree here, it's top four. I mean, you look behind you, you see teams like Atalanta who can score, who are going to be there for until the very end. Roma, it's going to be a dogfight for those 3-4 spots. So I think top four is going to be the big focus here, which is why I think that's going to be a big key thing to focus on with the lineup that Pioli puts out, to not compromise anything that can happen in that Napoli game.
Interesting. Thank you, Matt. What about a quick score prediction, Matt? What do you reckon for the first leg?
2-1 United, unfortunately.
Oh, lovely. Jeez, you can come on more often. Frank, what about you, mate? Just a quick reflection on what Matt just said, sort of where your priorities lie, what you're expecting to see from Milan on Thursday night, or Thursday evening even. Thursday probably morning, early hours of the morning for you guys. What are you expecting? And a score prediction from you as well.
Well, as far as the league itself, first and foremost, I mean, the title's not out of the question. The issue is that you're chasing an Inter team where this is all they've got left. And Antonio Conte can go out and play his best starting 11 every single game. He doesn't have to worry about rotation. He doesn't have to worry about other competitions. It would probably take a significant injury to a guy like a Romelu Lukaku, to a guy like a Nicolo Barella, who have been very impressive for them, or even one of their back three, to really, shake things up at this point. So, 6 points back, it's not out of the question. There's 7 points ahead of fifth at the moment over Atalanta, and that's the priority, is just trying to maintain that separation, and as Matt alluded to, and I agree with him, I said top four is the priority, and I'm comfortable being 7 points clear of fifth at this point, sitting in second. And if we can manage that gap the rest of the way, then that's fine with me. As far as this game, I expect United to come out on the front foot on Thursday. And what will be interesting is how Pioli adjusts to that. The most important thing for Milan, I think, on Thursday in the first leg at Old Trafford is not to concede in the first. If they can avoid conceding in the first 30 minutes, they're going to give themselves a chance to have a decent result. I'm with Matt. I'm in the 2-1 United camp, which I'm not going to panic about if it happens, because it means 1-0 at the San Siro puts us through. So I see 2-1 to United, but I also thought that Milan were going to just fall into a goal and draw Verona on Sunday with all of the injuries, and they won 2-0 and could have won by more. So every time I keep my expectations low about this Milan and Pioli, they seem to exceed them by leaps and bounds. So, my heart thinks that we can smash and grab an away win, but my mind is being more practical here and saying 2-1 to United.
I think it's interesting because United fans and I think rival fans see United's defence as an opportunity to exploit United. But I don't think it is our defence. I think our biggest problems come in the midfield. And I think if we get absolutely overruled in a midfield, then that is detrimental to the rest of the team. And then heads get down and then it's just a mess from there on in. I trust this United defence more than any United defence over the past 6-7 years. I think when we're in a big game, our defence turns up. For instance, against the top 6, yes, we've had a number of 0-0 draws. But out of, I think, was it 8 of those games, 6, the other team hasn't scored. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you've got to put those games away and win them. But United don't concede goals in big games. We're playing against the City side who went 21 games unbeaten and we limited them to nothing. Like, quite literally, they had snapshots and created some opportunities, but couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. I thought we were brilliant, like to a man. Our defence is looking great. Will Ollie rotate? Yes. Could that cause a little bit of uncertainty? Yes, of course it could. I fully expect potentially Eric Bailly to start over Lindelof, and I fully expect Telles to start as well. But you're talking about here 2 players who are experienced in the highest European competitions, play international football. Like, they shouldn't be of a detrimental effect to United's defensive unit, and they should, with all due respect, be able to deal with an AC Milan side that's currently massively hindered when it comes to your attack and your injury problems. So I'm not worried defensively. It's whether we can do the job at the other end of the pitch. And look, United have always struggled to put games to bed this season. However, I think we could come away I'm going to go 2-0. I think we can win 2-0. I think we can probably get that scored by half time and then everything relaxes a little bit. I think for both teams, I think because as you're saying, the situation you're in, at 2-0, you're like, right, okay, let's make some substitutions. Let's maybe try and keep it at 2-0. And then what happens in the second leg happens in the second leg, so to speak. But you're still in the tie at 2-0. It's not over. And for United, it's like, well, we can sit on a 2-0. We get 5 substitutions in the Europa League. Now we can bring off Bruno. Now we can bring off Martial. Now we can bring off players and just try to keep that scoreline. So I think the interesting half of football is going to be the second half, how both teams make changes, how then those players adapt to the game.
Yep.
Where does the influence come from? But I would be very disappointed if United don't take control of this tie, especially in the first half, and sort of shape the tie. I'm not saying that we're going to win 4-5-0, but what I'm trying to say is I do think that United have the potential to get half the job done in the first half and then make it a bit easier on ourselves in the second. I hope that's not disrespectful to you guys. That's just what I've seen from my honest opinion and from what you guys have obviously mentioned on this conversation. But may I just say that we've got 2 European giants here who have such rich history, who are both in similar places right now, who are striving for more. As fans, we're talking there about the league and priorities. As AC Milan fans, as Manchester United fans, trophies are the priority. Winning the league and winning every trophy is a priority. Scrap resting players. Let's go for it and let's see where we are on the other side. Lads, it's been fantastic chatting to you. Honestly, thank you so much. Maybe we can catch up next week before the second leg if you guys have got the time, because it'd be good to get you back on and have a chat about how that first leg went and look ahead to the second one too. But we'll arrange that next week. Thank you, Matt. Go give Matt a follow. Go check out the Serie A sit down as well with Frank. Thank you guys for watching. Hit thumbs up on this video if you enjoyed it. Share it far and wide. Reds, AC Milan fans, like each other, can find out about the 2 clubs that are going into Thursday's game and what type of game we expect to see as fans as well. So get both sets of fans involved. Subscribe to the channel if you're red. Loads of matchday content coming up between now and Thursday as well. For now, stay safe. I'll be back tomorrow with former Manchester United striker Danny Nardiello and Dale O'Donnell, the editor of Stressy News, to talk a little bit more about our upcoming European night against AC Milan. Let's take a breath. Stay safe, guys. Take it easy. Have a good Tuesday.